Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and welcome to Black Friday, where we're kind of having a repeat of the EV stock action that we had already. It's about 4 in the morning here, and I'm always up early watching the pre-market to see what's going on, and all the EV stocks are still going down. Actually, now Tesla and NIO are going down as well as all the others. And people are consolidating. They're taking some profits, I guess. But as far as Tesla is concerned, as far as the other companies, who knows? Taking some profits, they're getting a little nervous. I don't know. But I have a very interesting way of looking at this issue where Tesla compared to all the other competitors. An interesting way to think about it. And that way is to think about Apple for a second. And there's some amazing parallels in this story. So, first of all, Apple invented the personal computer. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you quite realize this. Now listen to me carefully. Apple didn't invent the computer. They invented the personal computer. They were the first company to mass produce a personal computer. Big stuff, right? 1977, they came out with the Apple II, and that thing went ballistic, and people's minds were flipped.
I feel incredibly lucky to be at exactly the right place in Silicon Valley, at exactly the right time historically, where this invention has taken form.
It wasn't like we both thought it was going to go a long ways. It was like, we'll both do it for fun, and even though we're going to lose some money probably, we'll just have been able to say we had a company.
And now this wasn't competing with any other market, by the way. It wasn't like there was an old computer market and then this was the new one. I guess there was. There were room-sized computers back in the day, and then they were like, actually, you don't need to make it in a room. You could make it in a small computer.
And I took this book home that described the PDP-8 computer, and it was just like a Bible to me. I mean, all these things that for some reason I'd fallen in love with, like you might fall in love with a card game called Magic, or you might fall in love with doing crossword puzzles or something else, or playing a musical instrument. I fell in love with these little descriptions of computers on their inside, and it was a little mathematics. I could work out some problems on paper and solve it and see how it's done, and I could come up with my own solutions and feel good inside.
The first Apple computer was primitive. It was cobbled together by Woz to impress his friends at the homebrew meetings.
Everybody was interested in computers, so I started getting a crowd around me, because even though I was too shy to raise my hand and say anything in a club meeting, after the club meetings, I would put my computer that I had built, and every week it had a little bit more working on it too. But I would set it down and let people type on the keyboard. I would explain what's in it. If they come up to me and ask a question, I can answer. Nowadays, I would have the ability to tell them what it is, and be a little bit more promotional, but back then I could only answer questions that they asked me. But I got a group that started gathering around me. And Steve Jobs saw that I had a lot of interest around me at the club, and he said, let's start selling it. And let's make this company. Came up with the name Apple, and that's how it started.
Everybody flipped out. Everybody jumped into the game, and they were all going crazy trying to catch up with Apple. Again, very similar to Tesla. They jumped in. They didn't tell anyone what was going on. Boom! It came on the scene, and everyone was like, ah! And they scrambled. It took IBM 4 years to come out with a computer. They came out with one in 1981. They came out with their competing product, and there were many other small companies that came up. Let me read you some of these names. See if you recognize them. Do you recognize Commodore 64? Texas Instruments, Tandy, the Tandy TRS-80, the Trash 80, they used to call it. Timex used to make computers, or tried to at least. Commodore Amiga. How about Acer, ALR, Ambra, AST, AT&T, Commodore, Compaq. You remember all these companies? Some of them, and probably most of them, you've never heard of, because they're not around anymore. They jumped in the game and they were going like crazy, but they just got swallowed by the industry that was created. They didn't realize what Steve Wozniak had done and Steve Jobs had done. And they thought they could get in there and grab some of that cash cow that Apple was making, but it just didn't work. So, and think about it this way. There's another amazing parallel. Think about this. So Wozniak realized that, they had information on those giant computers in rooms, and it said, if you want to do this process, you need 30 chips. And he was like, he figured out a way it could be 8 chips. And then he had another one that was 10, and he could get that down to 2 chips. And he just kept figuring out ways to reduce and reduce and reduce. And suddenly, the miniaturization of the computer became a thing. And it became suddenly a personal computer.
And so my dream for the Apple II was to sell the first real packaged computer.
Steve Jobs' dream was impossible. It needed too many chips, making the product too complicated and expensive to build. But Woz didn't know it was impossible.
And then I got into a way of why have memory for your TV screen and memory for your computer, make them one. And that shrunk the chips down, and I shrunk the chips here, and why not take all these timing circuits? I looked through manuals and found a chip that did it in 1 chip instead of 5 and reduced that. And one thing after another happened. I wound up with so few chips. When I was done, I said, hey, a computer that you can program to generate colored patterns on a screen, or data, or words, or play games, or anything. And it was just the computer I wanted, for myself, pretty much. And but it had turned out so good. He said, I think we have a computer we could sell 1,000 a month of.
And think about it. Elon did a very similar thing with manufacturing. He realized that he could take the rear end, and instead of 70-some parts, he said, well, I could do a casting and it'd be 1 part. And then the front could be 1 part instead of another. It's exactly what Wozniak did. He said, I got all these chips. I could reduce it down, and I could reduce that down and reduce it down. And Elon did the same thing with manufacturing automobiles. Reduce the number of parts, and therefore reduce the cost, that you don't need as many robots, and then you literally need less space to produce the vehicle. Now that's a difference from the old-fashioned automobile industry, whereas the personal computer industry didn't exist. But in essence, there was a computer industry. It was just room-sized computers that I'm sure very soon after Apple's computer came out, they were like, I think we're going to have a free room available. Anybody want an office? Because suddenly on this small computer, you could do much more than this gigantic room-sized monster was doing.
To a computer that looked like a piece of consumer electronics. And we can thank Steve Jobs for that. His sense of design demanded that this structural foam case be used for the Apple II, the first case of its type on a personal computer. And not that there wasn't good engineering inside either. The Apple II was a model of efficient engineering. Here's the floppy disk drive controller, for example. There are 8 chips here, where previously there would have been 35. This is an amazing bit of engineering that we can attribute to Steve Wozniak, who was certainly the Mozart of digital design. And all told, it turned the Apple II into a sensation.
When we were in the office, it was, hey, jokes and wiring up people's phones to do weird things, just every one of us. I mean, there wasn't a person in Apple, I don't think, for a couple of years that was, super serious. We were lucky. We had, the hot product of its day. It went so successful that all of a sudden, Steve and I wouldn't have to worry about work for the rest of our lives. And then it got even more successful and more successful after that. And it was sort of a shock.
The Apple II set a new standard for personal computers and showed there was some real money to be made. Rival companies popped up all over.
So there's some similarities there. And as I said, with all the competitors that came in to compete with Apple, there's so many of them failed today. And here it is, literally 43 years later. And who's pretty much at the top of the computer industry? Apple. Who would you buy a computer from if you didn't buy it from Apple? You might buy a whole bunch of parts and make a PC. Maybe, I don't know, is Dell still going? I really don't know. IBM, I think you can buy one from. But, an IBM you might even buy shares in. But there just aren't many HP, But would you buy shares of HP? Would you buy any stock? No. So think about it when you've got these new Tesla companies coming into the fray. They're like, we're going to get in on this. And like I said, in 5 or 10 years, a lot of these could be gone. So again, I lived through most of that Apple story. So I saw firsthand how companies just disappeared overnight. And 1 year they're there, the next year they're not. So in the end, the answer may just be put your money in Tesla. Because these other EV companies, you just don't know if they're going to make it. Now, yes, they're completely speculative. And put some money and see what happens. But keep your eyes peeled because they may suddenly have bad news and they'll be like Nikola, gone. So that's one way to think about the EV stocks. And so be careful out there with it. And, I'm going to try to get into some more Tesla. They're going down today, so I'm going to look and see. They're going down relatively substantially. I think they're down $13 already. I'm not sure. Now, again, pre-market is a whole nother animal. Right now, it's going down. And so many times I go to the pre-market, it's red, 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 red. But it just begins to convert by the time the market opens. And then it's like back to green. And then all day during the market, it's green. Nobody knew. A lot of people didn't know there was so much going on in the early hours. So anyway, that's one way to think about it. So enjoy your Black Friday. I doubt there's going to be any people running to get products today. We kind of killed the whole Black Friday fun. So Black Friday now goes on for 2 weeks. But I hope everybody got stuffed. I ate so much food. But it was so delicious, and I got a care package that I'm going to have lunch today with. Can't wait. All right. See you on the next one. Bye.